I was replaced by the CEO's niece just 24 hours before my retirement. Then, a $99 million deal vanished overnight. Rowan, Mr. Alistair Finch, the CEO of Apex Innovations, began, his voice smooth but devoid of its usual professional deference. I apologize for the abruptness, but we're initiating an immediate leadership transition. Effective immediately, your role will be assumed by Ms. Lyra Finch. He gestured to a young woman, barely 23, who materialized from behind him. Her eyes, wide and almost too bright, darted around my office, taking in the framed awards, the complex diagrams on my whiteboards, and the very air of accumulated experience. I recognized her instantly. Lyra, Mr. Finch's niece, fresh out of some elite, obscure business program, with a resume thinner than a credit card statement. A leadership transition? It was a corporate euphemism for being unceremoniously pushed out. Not in a week, not in a day, but now. My heart pounded, a drum solo of disbelief and betrayal. 26 years, 26 years of my life poured into this company, into these projects, into this very contract, and it was all being erased in the blink of an eye, replaced by a fresh-faced, inexperienced newcomer who couldn't possibly grasp the intricacies of what lay before her. The betrayal tasted bitter, like ash in my mouth. I wanted to scream, to rage, to tear down the elaborate facade of corporate politeness. But decades of executive training had ingrained a certain composure, a quiet strength. I simply nodded, my gaze locked on the flickering holographic display, knowing full well that the final biometric confirmation, the one that would truly seal the deal, remained untouched. The fluorescent lights of my office at Apex Innovations hummed a familiar, almost comforting tune, a soundtrack to the 2.5 decades I dedicated to this place. My name is Rowan Thorne, and at 52, I believed she was at the pinnacle of her career, on the cusp of finalizing the largest defense contract in the company's history, a $99 million deal with Stellaris Dynamics. The holographic display before me shimmered, showing the final few biometric confirmations remaining, the culmination of countless late nights and strategic maneuvers. My retirement, a quiet cabin by a serene lake, felt tantalizingly close, just a handful of hours away. My peace had been shattered by that sharp, almost theatrical knock on my frosted glass door, and by the words that followed. They thought they could simply erase my legacy, but some imprints run deeper than a simple swipe of a corporate badge. My exit from Apex Innovations was swift, clinical, and utterly devoid of grace. A security guard, whose face I vaguely recognized from countless late-night shifts, politely escorted me to my desk. He watched as I packed a few personal items, a framed photo of my Labrador, Buster, a well-worn ergonomic mouse, and a small, potted succulent that had miraculously survived years of office air conditioning. My access card was deactivated with a soft thunk, and my personal effects were swiftly boxed and carried away by an assistant who avoided my gaze. As I walked past the open-plan offices, a few sympathetic glances followed me, but most heads remained bowed over screens, pretending not to notice the sudden silent departure of a woman who had, until moments ago, been an indispensable pillar of the company. What they didn't know, what Alistair and his eager niece, Lyra, couldn't possibly fathom, was the intricate web of protocols I had woven into the very fabric of the Stellaris Dynamics contract. For 2.5 decades, I had not just managed projects. I had built systems, fortified defenses, and designed the very architecture of their most sensitive deals. The $99 million contract, critical for Apex future revenue streams, was more than just numbers on a page. It was a fortress, and I held the sole key to its final, impenetrable gate. Months ago, foreseeing potential vulnerabilities in large-scale defense agreements, I had implemented a unique, multi-layered biometric verification protocol for its ultimate authorization. This wasn't standard company policy. It was my personal brainchild, subtly integrated and approved as a robust security enhancement during a phase where Alistair was too preoccupied with mergers to scrutinize the minutiae. The system required 3 critical authenticators for the final seal: my unique vocal signature, linked to a specific encrypted terminal within my former office, and a real-time geolocation confirmation that matched the exact coordinates of that terminal. Without all 3, the contract, for all intents and purposes, remained in a perpetual state of pending authorization, a digital ghost. As the security guard ushered me away, I paused at the threshold of my office. My eyes lingered on the glowing holographic display, still showing the incomplete authorization sequence. I didn't close it. I didn't log out of that specific secure terminal. I simply logged out of my general company network access, a routine procedure. The specialized verification system, however, was designed to remain active, awaiting its specific set of biometric inputs. It was a silent, almost invisible trap, waiting for the unwary. They could transfer the files, they could laud Lyra's deal-making prowess, but without my voice, my terminal, and my physical presence, that $99 million was going nowhere. It was a final, quiet act of defiance, a testament to the fact that true control isn't just about titles or positions, but about knowledge and foresight. My legacy wouldn't be erased. It would simply, elegantly wait. They paraded their new talent across every news outlet, boasting of a triumph that was, in reality, nothing but an empty shell. My forced departure from Apex Innovations wasn't just a quiet corporate reshuffle. It was the prelude to a meticulously orchestrated public relations offensive. Within my 24 hours lines of my sudden exit, the digital airwaves were saturated with glowing reports about Apex's visionary leadership and their new Gen Z powerhouse, Ms. Lyra Finch. I saw it all unfold from my small, temporary apartment, a place that felt a million miles away from the polished glass towers of downtown. My old work terminal, now just a personal laptop, became my window into the spectacle. Alistair Finch, ever the showman, wasted no time in presenting Lyra as the architect of the Stellaris Dynamics deal. News channels, eager for a fresh face and a compelling narrative, ate it up. There she was, on Global Business Now, looking far too confident for someone who hadn't contributed a single substantive idea to the contract. Her voice, thin and reedy compared to the commanding tones I'd cultivated over decades, spoke of innovative strategies and bold negotiations that had somehow, magically, secured the $99 million agreement. "We believe in fostering dynamic, new talent," Alistair declared in one interview, his arm slung protectively around Lyra's shoulders, a picture of familial pride. Lyra represents the future of corporate leadership, agile, intuitive, and incredibly astute. Lyra, for her part, beamed. She recited talking points that were clearly fed to her, often stumbling over technical terms that I had personally vetted countless times. In one particularly cringeworthy segment on Market Pulse Today, she pronounced Stellaris Dynamics as Stellaris Dynamics, a subtle but glaring error that sent a chill down my spine. It was a clear indication that she hadn't genuinely absorbed the details of the very client she was supposedly celebrating. My former colleagues, many of whom had worked alongside me on this specific project for the better part of 9 months, must have winced. I certainly did. The sheer audacity of it was staggering. They were taking credit for my 26 years of painstaking work, for the relationships I had cultivated, for the complex legal and technical frameworks I had painstakingly built. Every accolade showered upon Lyra felt like a direct insult, a chisel chipping away at my hard-earned reputation. It wasn't just the contract. It was the public narrative, the rewriting of history. They were not merely replacing me. They were erasing me from the story entirely, inserting a caricature in my place. Watching Lyra confidently and incorrectly articulate her vision for the partnership, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of grim satisfaction. The public, the eager journalists, even the company's investors were being fed a carefully constructed illusion. They saw the dazzling veneer, the confident smiles, and the projected future successes. What they couldn't see was the intricate, hidden mechanism beneath the surface, the very protocol I had put in place, silently waiting for the inevitable moment when the illusion would collide with reality. The more they amplified Lyra's supposed triumph, the greater the fall would be when the truth, or rather, the system's immovable reality, finally came to light. I just had to wait. They celebrated their premature victory, but the digital fortress I'd built stood unyielding, its gates refusing to open for the unworthy. The days following my dismissal blurred into a surreal mix of enforced idleness and the relentless drone of news cycles praising Lyra Finch. I watched, detached, as Apex Innovation stock saw a momentary bump, fueled by the PR frenzy. Analysts lauded Alistair Finch's bold strategic move and Lyra's supposed fresh perspective. It all felt like a grand, meticulously choreographed lie, a stage play where the lead actress knew none of her lines. I knew the real show was yet to begin. My anticipation grew with each passing hour. The Stellaris Dynamics contract, that $99 million. Behemoth couldn't remain in limbo forever. Sooner or later, Lyra, or more likely Alistair himself, would attempt to finalize it, and when they did, my silent guardian would awaken. The call I'd been half expecting, half dreading, finally came on a Tuesday afternoon, nearly a week after my exit. Not to me, of course, but to a former colleague, Dominic Kalin, a brilliant but perpetually stressed head of IT. I heard about it through a discreet, encrypted message from a contact still inside Apex, someone who believed in quiet justice. Dominic was reportedly in a panic. Lyra had attempted to authorize the contract, and the system had simply refused. Lyra, according to the whispers, had sat down at my old terminal, probably with Alistair looking over her shoulder, ready to perform the final biometric scan. She would have used her own fingerprints, perhaps a facial scan, confident that her new executive privileges would grant her access. But my protocol wasn't designed for generic corporate access. It was designed for my specific voice, my unique vocal frequency patterns linked to that particular terminal and verified by its GPS coordinates. The system, as I'd engineered it, didn't just display an error message. It didn't just deny access. It initiated a layered security lockout. The initial attempts by Lyra triggered a series of silent alarms on a secure external server that only I had access to. These alarms didn't notify Apex. They merely confirmed that the protocol was engaged and functioning as intended. Then, for Lyra, a polite yet firm digital voice would have stated, "Authorization protocol requires specific biometric verification. Access denied." Alistair, I could imagine, would have dismissed it as a minor technical glitch. "Get it on this," he would have barked, assuming a quick override was all that was needed. But what they didn't realize was the depth of the integration. My system wasn't a simple software patch. It was intertwined with the core encryption framework of the entire contract. Attempting to force it, to bypass it with generic administrative overrides, would risk corrupting the entire $99 million digital document. It wasn't just about unlocking. It was about preserving the integrity of the data itself. A corrupted contract was no contract at all. Dominic and his team, undoubtedly pulling all-nighters, would have tried everything. They would have scanned the code, poked at the firewall, even considered a full system reboot, but the protocol was self-preserving. It was designed to detect tampering, and any unauthorized attempt to circumvent it would trigger further layers of encryption, effectively bricking the entire contract file. The more they pushed, the more the system would resist, like a digital drawbridge pulling up higher with each desperate assault. I pictured Alistair's growing frustration, Lyra's flustered incompetence. The whispers confirmed it. The atmosphere at Apex was shifting from celebratory triumph to quiet, simmering panic. The public facade was holding for now, but internally, the cracks were beginning to show. The $99 million deal wasn't vanishing overnight yet, but it was certainly refusing to materialize, trapped behind the invisible, unyielding barrier of my own design. While Apex was busy weaving its web of deceit, an astute mind on the other side of the table began to spot the frayed threads. My routine after leaving Apex Innovations quickly settled into a quiet hum. Mornings were spent at the local community library, delving into advanced cybersecurity journals, keeping my mind sharp. Afternoons involved long walks with Buster, my loyal Labrador, by the small lake near my new dwelling. The only ripples I concerned myself with being those on the water's surface. Yet, even in this newfound tranquility, the digital pulse of the corporate world still found its way to me, thanks to discreet updates from my contact. It was during one of these quiet mornings, amidst the rustle of turning pages and the distant murmur of library patrons, that I received a cryptic message. It was from Callum Vance, the procurement director at Stellaris Dynamics. Callum was a man I respected immensely, sharp, meticulous, with a quiet intensity that belied his understated demeanor. He wasn't one for small talk or corporate pleasantries. His messages were always direct, cutting straight to the chase. This one was no different. A single, encrypted line asking for a brief, unofficial chat regarding contract anomalies. My heart gave a faint lurch. Callum wasn't just any client contact. He was the client, the direct link to the $99 million deal. If he was reaching out, it meant something significant was amiss on their end. He was too seasoned, too professional to waste time on trivialities. We arranged a secure video call later that afternoon. Callum's face, usually calm and composed, held a subtle tension. "Rowan," he began, his voice low. "I'm sure you're aware of the recent changes at Apex. He chose his words carefully, navigating the corporate minefield. I nodded. I'm aware, Callum. A rather abrupt leadership transition, they called it. A wry smile touched my lips. Indeed, he responded, a hint of steel entering his tone. And since then, we've encountered some inconsistencies. Specifically, with the final version of the contract for the Aegis Sentinel project. There are minor alterations in the digital signatures, and more concerningly, an inexplicable delay in the final authorization. Apex tells us it's a minor internal technical issue, but something feels off, and your sudden absence, of course, hasn't gone unnoticed. This was it, the moment I had anticipated. Callum, I said, leaning closer to the screen, my voice dropping to a near whisper. Have you cross-referenced the current digital contract with the penultimate version we reviewed a week and a half ago? He blinked, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. We did, yes. There are some minor versioning discrepancies, but nothing overtly critical on the surface. Look closer, I urged, a subtle emphasis on the last word. Specifically, check subclause 7.3b on page 43 of the full digital dossier. It outlines the biometric gateway activation protocol for finalization. It's a layer of security I personally integrated. Callum's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. He murmured a quick, "Thank you, Rowan," and the call disconnected. I knew what he would find. The clause I referred to detailed the stringent biometric requirements for the contract's ultimate activation. My voice print, my specific terminal, my real-time location. It was a detail Alistair would have certainly tried to remove or alter when he brought Lyra in, trying to streamline the process for his inexperienced niece, but altering that specific subclause without triggering larger integrity flags would have been nearly impossible without deep, specialized knowledge of the system's architecture. Knowledge only I possessed. Alistair's attempt to circumvent my carefully constructed barrier, coupled with his brazen PR campaign, was now coming under the scrutiny of someone far more astute than the average journalist. Callum Vance, with his sharp legal mind and an instinct for anomalies, was exactly the kind of person who could peel back the layers of Apex's corporate spin. He wouldn't just see a delay. He would see a deliberate attempt to bypass a critical security measure. The first domino was teetering. The carefully constructed illusion began to crack, and the first tremors of the ensuing chaos rippled through the very foundations of Apex Innovations. The call from Callum Vance acted like a subtle, yet powerful, catalyst. I knew his investigative mind wouldn't rest until he uncovered the full truth. He wouldn't just find subclause 7.3b. He'd dissect it, understand its implications, and connect it to the sudden, baffling unavailability of the final contract authorization. The seeds of doubt had been planted, not by me directly, but by the undeniable evidence of the system itself. It took another 3 days for the tremors to escalate into a full-blown corporate earthquake. My encrypted news feeds, previously buzzing with celebratory articles about Lyra Finch, began to shift. The tone became cautious, then questioning, then overtly critical. It started subtly, with financial blogs posing hypothetical questions about unforeseen technical delays impacting major deals. Then the whispers grew louder. Sources close to Apex Innovations confirm a significant snag in the Stellaris Dynamics contract, read a headline on Corporate Watchdog, a prominent online publication known for its investigative prowess. The article went on to speculate about internal security conflicts and an unexplained authorization roadblock. They didn't name me directly, but the thinly veiled references to a recently terminated executive with deep institutional knowledge were unmistakable. The financial markets, always hypersensitive to uncertainty, reacted swiftly. Apex Innovations stock, which had enjoyed a brief artificial surge after Lyra's PR blitz, began to falter. A single-point drop. Then 2 points. By the end of that day, it had shed a remarkable 5 points, wiping out millions from the company's valuation. Investors, who had cheered Alistair's bold vision just days earlier, were now demanding answers. The initial optimistic buzz transformed into a chorus of doubt and apprehension. I watched it unfold from my quiet sanctuary, a small smile playing on my lips. It wasn't about malice, it was about justice. They had tried to erase 26 years on of my dedication, to steal my final triumph and replace it with a hollow, inexperienced figurehead. Now, the market, the ultimate arbiter of corporate truth, was beginning to expose their folly. Alistair Finch, I imagined, would be in a state of barely contained panic. His carefully constructed narrative was crumbling, exposed by the very deal he'd rushed to claim. Lyra, the Gen Z dealmaker, was undoubtedly facing intense scrutiny, her lack of understanding becoming painfully obvious with each passing hour the contract remained unauthorized. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very protocol I had designed to protect Stellaris dynamics, to ensure the integrity of a critical defense project, was now serving as the ultimate barrier against Apex's corporate deceit. It wasn't just about a technical glitch. It was about transparency, trust, and the fundamental value of expertise. The absence of my biometric signature wasn't merely a missing piece. It was a glaring sign of a system that had been compromised by arrogance and a profound lack of foresight. The news cycles turned viciously. Op-eds questioned Alistair's leadership, citing questionable personnel decisions and a disturbing lack of foresight in critical project management. The narrative had flipped. The bold, strategic move was now being framed as a disastrous gamble, risking a $99 million loss contract and Apex's very reputation. The stage was set for the next act, one where the consequences would be far more severe than just a few dropped stock points. The empire he built on arrogance began to crumble, and suddenly, the very woman he discarded became his only hope. The digital onslaught against Apex Innovations intensified with each passing day. The stock price, once a source of Alistair Finch's boundless pride, plummeted further, wiping out approximately $7 million in market capitalization by the end of the second week. Investment analysts, once effusive, now used terms like catastrophic mismanagement and leadership crisis. Lyra Finch, once hailed as a prodigy, became the face of the debacle. Her interviews now replayed on loop as examples of corporate hubris. The mockery was palpable, even through the impersonal screen of my laptop. I imagined the frantic, high-stakes meetings happening within Apex. Alistair, losing control of his carefully crafted empire, would be desperate. He couldn't blame Lyra entirely. The ultimate responsibility rested with him. The realization must have dawned on him, slowly and painfully, that the minor technical issue wasn't minor at all. It was a lock, and I, the woman he'd dismissed with such callous disregard, held the only key. The first attempt to contact me came through an intermediary, a frantic voicemail from a junior HR manager, pleading for a brief, informal chat. I ignored it. Then came an email from Alistair's personal assistant, formal but increasingly urgent, requesting your immediate availability to discuss an urgent matter related to the Stellaris Dynamics contract. I archived it without a second thought. My terms were clear, unspoken, but absolute. No more informal chats, no more veiled requests. The actual call from Alistair Finch himself came on a Wednesday evening, nearly 2 weeks after my dismissal. My phone, usually silent save for my sister's occasional check-ins, vibrated with an unfamiliar number. I recognized the company's executive line prefix. I let it ring twice before answering, a calculated delay. Rowan. His voice, usually so composed, was strained, edged with a desperation I had never heard. Rowan, thank God you picked up. We have a situation here at Apex. The Stellaris Dynamics deal. It's stuck. I remained silent, letting the discomfort hang in the air. Look, I know how this looks, he stammered, his usual smooth delivery replaced by genuine panic. And I know how I handled your departure was regrettable. But this is critical, Rowan. We're talking about $99 million, the future of the company, hundreds of jobs. We need your help. You're the only one who can get this contract through. The irony was thick enough to cut with a knife. This was the man who had erased my 26 years of service, who had paraded his inexperienced niece as my replacement, now begging for my expertise. My help, Mr. Finch. I finally spoke, my voice calm, level, betraying none of the simmering indignation I felt. My services are no longer available to Apex Innovations. You made that very clear. No, Rowan, please. Let's not be petty, he pleaded, his voice rising in pitch. This is beyond personal. This is business. National security, even. Stellaris Dynamics is furious. Callum Vance has practically threatened to pull the plug. Petty? I scoffed softly. You escorted me out, Mr. Finch, hours before I was due to retire, to finalize my deal, replacing me with someone who couldn't spell biometric if her life depended on it. You held press conferences celebrating her triumph. And now, when your carefully constructed fantasy collapses, you come crawling back. He went silent for a moment, the weight of my words clearly sinking in. Then, with a deep, shaky breath, he conceded, You're right. I was wrong, terribly wrong. Just tell me what it will take. Anything. We need you, Rowan. The company needs you. Anything? I repeated, a cold resolve settling in my chest. Then you'll meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the offices of Chen and Associates, attorneys at law. My legal counsel will be present, and you will come prepared to discuss the full and undeniable ownership of the biometric gateway protocol I designed. Legacy, Mr. Finch, isn't free, and its price, it seems, is only just beginning to be calculated. I ended the call, leaving him to ponder the true cost of his arrogance. The power dynamic had irrevocably shifted. The corporate titan was now at the mercy of the woman he had tried to break. The tables had turned, and the next day's meeting would not be a negotiation, but a reckoning. The corporate titan's arrogance had finally caught up to him. The multi-million-dollar deal, once a crown jewel, was officially dead. The meeting at Chen and Associates the next morning felt less like a negotiation and more like a carefully choreographed surrender. The conference room was stark, bathed in the cool, neutral tones of a high-stakes legal battle. On my side of the polished mahogany table sat myself and Mr. Ethan Chen, my lawyer, a man whose quiet demeanor hid a razor-sharp intellect and a formidable legal mind. Across from us sat Alistair Finch, looking considerably older and far more harried than he had a few weeks prior, flanked by two of Apex Innovation's in-house counsel, their faces grim. Lyra Finch was conspicuously absent. The tension in the room was palpable, thick enough to cut with a dull knife. Alistair, usually brimming with confident platitudes, merely nodded in greeting, his gaze fixed on the table. He knew why he was there. He knew he had no leverage. Ethan Chen, without preamble, laid out the terms. "Mr. Finch," he began, his voice calm and authoritative, "my client, Ms. Rowan Thorne, is here today to address the ongoing impasse concerning the Stellaris Dynamics contract. As you are aware, the final authorization protocol for this $99 million agreement is tied directly to a system designed, implemented, and legally owned by Ms. Thorne. Without her express authorization, the contract cannot be activated, and indeed, any attempt to bypass it risks corrupting the entire digital dossier, rendering it null and void." He then slid a document across the table. "This is a copy of the intellectual property agreement drafted and filed 3 years ago, detailing Ms. Thorne's sole ownership of the Apex Secure Gateway Protocol, the very system in question." Alistair flinched as if struck. His in-house lawyers quickly scanned the document, their expressions shifting from wary to resigned. They must have checked this already, confirming the undeniable legal truth. "Mr. Finch, your company has been in breach of this agreement," Ethan continued, his voice unwavering. "Furthermore, the public relations campaign casting Ms. Thorne aside and misrepresenting the capabilities of Ms. Lyra Finch has caused significant reputational damage to my client." Alistair cleared his throat, his voice raspy. "Rowan, please. What do you want? Name your price. We can re-engage you as a consultant, an advisor. Anything to salvage this deal." I finally spoke, my voice devoid of emotion, a stark contrast to his desperation. "My price, Mr. Finch, isn't simply a number anymore. It's about accountability. It's about integrity. And it's about the fundamental disrespect you showed not just to me, but to the very concept of expertise." Just then, as if on cue, Alistair's personal device, which he had foolishly left on the table, vibrated incessantly. He glanced at the screen, and his face drained of all color. He pushed himself back from the table, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "What is it, Gregory?" one of his lawyers asked, using his first name in a rare moment of informality. Alistair looked up, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and utter defeat. "It's Callum Vance," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Stellaris Dynamics. They've officially terminated the contract." A heavy silence descended upon the room. The air crackled with the finality of it. The $99 million deal, the very lifeline of Apex Innovation's immediate future, was gone. Not delayed, not stalled, but unequivocally terminated. Ethan Chen remained impassive. Under the terms of our initial discussions with Stellaris Dynamics, any unresolved technical or transparency issues, especially those impacting security protocols, within 48 hours of the finalization deadline, would grant them the right to terminate without penalty. He looked directly at Alistair. "It appears your minor internal technical issue failed to meet that timeline." Alistair could only nod, a broken man. The carefully orchestrated PR blitz, the brazen dismissal, the desperate pleas, all had amounted to nothing. His empire, built on a foundation of borrowed glory and arrogant shortcuts, had finally crumbled under the weight of its own deceit. The legacy he had sought to erase had, instead, ensured his downfall. The echoes of the lost deal reverberated through Apex, stripping away titles and exposing the true cost of unchecked arrogance. The news of the Stellaris Dynamics contract termination ripped through Apex Innovations like a digital wildfire. It wasn't just a financial blow, it was a profound blow to their reputation, a stark public humiliation. The media, which had so eagerly amplified Lyra's supposed genius, now gleefully reported on the company's colossal misstep. Articles dissected the baffling management decisions and the catastrophic loss of a $99 million in opportunity, almost always mentioning the abrupt dismissal of a seasoned executive. I didn't need to be there to envision the chaos. The polished glass walls of Apex, once a symbol of its impervious success, would now feel like a suffocating cage for Alistair Finch. The atmosphere, once buzzing with ambition, would be thick with recrimination and fear. Every raised eyebrow, every whispered conversation would be a testament to his colossal failure. Lyra Finch, the supposed wunderkind, was the first domino to fall internally. Her public gaffes and undeniable incompetence regarding the contract became impossible to ignore. Sources, my ever-reliable contacts still on the inside, reported that she was swiftly, though quietly, removed from all active projects. She wasn't fired, not outright, likely to avoid further public scandal, but effectively sidelined, relegated to meaningless tasks in some obscure corner of the building. Her brief, ill-gotten reign as a Gen Z dealmaker had ended in a spectacular crash, leaving behind only the wreckage of a shattered reputation and a career that had peaked before it even truly began. Her social media presence, once a flurry of self-congratulatory posts, went silent overnight. The spotlight she had craved had turned into a searing interrogation lamp. But the ultimate reckoning was for Alistair Finch. The board of directors, initially swayed by his charismatic vision and Lyra's alleged prowess, couldn't ignore the gaping hole left by the terminated Stellaris contract. A $99 million loss wasn't just a setback. It was an existential threat, particularly compounded by the plunging stock price. Apex Innovations needed stability, and Alistair, with his reckless decisions and disastrous PR strategy, had become the embodiment of instability. The internal power struggle, carefully concealed for years, finally erupted. Whispers turned into accusations, and accusations into demands. There were heated meetings, late-night calls, and no doubt a desperate scramble by Alistair to deflect blame. But the evidence was damning. He had dismissed a 26-year veteran, ignored established protocols, and placed an unqualified family member in a critical position, all to claim a victory that wasn't his to begin with. The final announcement was delivered with the usual corporate boilerplate, carefully phrased to minimize damage. Alistair Finch was stepping down to pursue other opportunities, a polite fiction for being forced out. His replacement was named, a seasoned, no-nonsense executive from a rival firm, brought in specifically to stabilize the bleeding ship and restore investor confidence. The dynasty, the Finch legacy he had so carefully cultivated, had fractured under his watch. The irony was sweet, a bitter tonic for the injustice I had endured. As Alistair's face faded from the business news headlines, replaced by his successor's stoic portrait, I felt a peculiar mix of emptiness and vindication. The rage that had fueled me for weeks began to recede, replaced by a quiet sense of closure. Apex Innovations, the company that had defined so much of my adult life, was now a distant, tarnished memory. My future, however, was suddenly wide open, unburdened by past loyalties or corporate treachery. The old world had crumbled behind me, but as one door slammed shut, another, far more promising, swung wide open. The dust settled quickly at Apex Innovations, or at least that's what the news cycles implied. Alistair Finch was out, Lyra was a ghost, and a new CEO was trying to stitch the company back together. But my focus had already shifted from the ashes of my past to the fertile ground of my future. The quiet cabin by the lake, once a distant retirement dream, was becoming a vibrant reality filled with the promise of genuine peace. Just as I was starting to truly disconnect, to savor the simple rhythm of my days with Buster, my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID clearly showed Stellaris Dynamics, and specifically Callum Vance. My previous interactions with him had been professional, almost austere, but the tone of his voice, when I answered, was different. It carried a warmth, an unmistakable respect that Apex had long forgotten. "Rowan," he began, "I trust you're doing well. I wanted to personally thank you, though indirectly, for your foresight regarding the Apex Secure Gateway Protocol. It, frankly, saved us from a deeply compromising situation. That subclause 7.3b, brilliant." A small, genuine smile touched my lips. "I'm glad it served its purpose, Callum." "More than served it," he chuckled, a rare sound. It highlighted a level of integrity and strategic thinking we rarely encounter. And frankly, we're impressed. Very impressed. He paused, and I could sense a significant proposition coming. "Rowan, Stellaris Dynamics is expanding our internal strategic advisory board. We're looking for independent, uncompromised minds to help us navigate increasingly complex vendor landscapes and enhance our own internal security frameworks. We need someone with your unique blend of technical genius, operational experience, and, dare I say, unwavering moral compass." My heart gave a little flutter. This wasn't just a job offer, it was a validation. It was an acknowledgement of everything I had been, everything I had built, without the corporate politics, the backstabbing, or the superficiality. "What exactly does that entail, Callum?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, professional. "It entails full discretion, Rowan. You would operate as an independent strategic advisor, setting your own hours, your own terms. Your insights would be invaluable in high-level defense project planning and risk assessment. We're talking about a compensation package that reflects your unparalleled expertise, significantly more, I might add, than anything Apex could have offered, even before this debacle. And no more internal corporate nonsense, no more vying for promotions, no more battling with unqualified leadership. Just pure, impactful work, directly shaping the future of critical national defense technologies." He laid out the offer in clear, concise terms. It was everything I had ever wanted in my career, stripped of the draining corporate bureaucracy. A chance to contribute meaningfully, to truly make a difference on my own terms, with my expertise genuinely valued. This wasn't just a new chapter, it was an entirely new book. I looked out my window at the serene lake, Buster snoozing peacefully at my feet. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The past few weeks had been a storm, a cleansing fire that had burned away the illusions and revealed the true path forward. "Callum," I said, a deep sense of peace settling over me. "I accept. It sounds exactly like the kind of retirement I never knew I wanted." And so, my journey continued, not into a quiet, unnoticed sunset, but into a vibrant new dawn. The value of true expertise, of unwavering integrity, had not been erased. It had simply found a new and far more appreciative home. My legacy wasn't just safe, it was finally free to soar. After going through Rowan Thorne's story, The Abrupt Farewell, I've pulled out a few real-world lessons that I think anyone can relate to. First off, it really highlights the power of genuine capability. No matter if you're pushed aside or replaced by someone who's got more connections than competence, your true skills and knowledge don't just disappear. Just like Rowan, the system she built wouldn't listen to anyone but her, because it was a product of her intellect and hard work. You might get fired, but what you're genuinely good at, what you've poured your sweat and effort into, will always be your strongest asset. So, never stop learning and honing your craft. Second, it's a stark reminder. Don't underestimate anyone, or it might just blow up in your face. Seeing Alistair and Lyra celebrate their premature victory, openly taking credit for someone else's hard work, only to crash and burn spectacularly, is a serious wake-up call. In life and in business, never look down on or push aside others, especially those with real talent and experience. Arrogance, greed, and disrespect eventually lead to self-destruction. Karma can hit fast, sometimes without you even needing to lift a finger. Third, this story firmly proves that integrity always wins out. Rowan could have lashed out in anger or sabotaged things from the start, but she chose to let the system speak for itself. Her integrity and resolve, even when she was treated unfairly, ultimately not only brought her justice, but also opened up a far better opportunity. When you live with integrity and work with heart, no matter how many storms you face, you'll find your peaceful and well-deserved haven. Finally, and perhaps most profoundly, it shows us that sometimes, when one door closes, a whole new horizon opens. Rowan's dismissal felt like the end of the world, but it turned out to be the pivot that allowed her to escape a toxic environment and find a job where her true value was genuinely appreciated. That's just how life is sometimes. Big changes, even those that seem like they'll break you, can actually be the springboard to amazing things you never even dared to dream of. In a nutshell, this story is a powerful reminder. Keep doing your best, live with integrity, and never, ever underestimate the power of truth and genuine capability. As they say, old habits die hard, and true value, that can never truly be erased. Thank you for following Rowan Thorne's story and the lessons we've uncovered together. I hope these words have given you some meaningful moments and food for thought. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next compelling story. See you in the next video.